Hey, thanks for clicking on this video about how to prep for your Regs exam. This exam is not a memory test or a test on your knowledge of the regulations or wiring rules. What it really boils down to is your ability to navigate the index and produce the exact answer they're looking for with speed. You might be thinking, 3 hours, 85 questions, that's heaps of time, should be right. But that means you've got to be working at a rate of 1 question every 2 minutes. Personally, I missed out on answering 1 question because of time restraints. I was part of the first lot of tradies to sit this new exam format. And as testing, they told us they used the receptionist to sit the exam. She not only answered all of the questions, but she passed. That's because it is not a memory test. It's about your ability to work through this book at speed. Now don't get me wrong, the new format does make it a lot more streamlined. You're on the computer selecting from multi-choice questions, opposed to the old exam where you're battling pen and paper to write down your answers verbatim while still searching through your Regs book to find the answer. So the main thing I recommend is to thoroughly tab out your wiring rules and Regs book. Use a system that makes sense to you and reduces the amount of time that you would spend flipping to find pages. Because the more efficient you are in finding the information you need, the better you will set yourself up for success. Just keep in mind, at the same time, you don't want to make the side of your books so cluttered that in the exam, you're having to spend time deciphering how it's tabbed out. And just as a side note, you can write on your tabs for the exam.
What is the minimum height a switchboard can be installed? What is the maximum height a main switch can be installed?
Found it. Main switches shall be readily accessible and the means of operation such switches shall not be more than 2 meters above the ground floor or suitable platform. Restricted locations for switchboards are as follow. Height above the ground from floor or platform. A switchboard shall not be located within 1.2 meters of the ground, floor or platform. So the minimum height is 1.2 meters. What I'm going to take you through now is how I set up my book when I was getting ready for my exam. Now, I'm not saying that this is the only way. This is just what worked for me. I'm sure that there are plenty of other methods out there. But I do recommend that whatever tabbing you do it yourself. If you get a second-hand book, you need to rip all of the tabs out and start again. Use a system that you understand, and in doing this, you will become far more familiar with the book. We're going to start with the index, and using tabs we're going to isolate each of the letters of the alphabet by its page location. So that's the index tabbed out. If I was sitting my exam again, I probably would trim all the end of these tabs, make them the same, make them look good. For an example, L, you can grab your tab, open straight to the page. There's L for lamp holders. Next is the Regs book. Unlike the wiring rules, where the index has numbered references to take you to exact statements you're after. The Regs book has a contents page with broad topics. So what I found most helpful was putting a tab every 20 or so pages. So now that it's tabbed out, if I want to say, look for extra low voltage installations on page 59, I can go to page 61, which is tabbed. And I know that 59 is just one back. Testing prescribed electrical work on low or extra low voltage installations. Okay, on to the wiring rules. Using tabs, I'm going to isolate each section 1 through 8 by its page location. This makes it easier to navigate the specific number reference from the index. Okay, now that we have all our sections tabbed out, we can find something like, let's say 5.5.5.1. Just go straight to number 5, like this. And we know 5.5 will be about halfway somewhere. 5.5.3. Here we go. All earthing conductors and other forms of earthing medium shall be installed in a manner that provides adequate protection against likely mechanical damage, inadvertent interference, and chemical deterioration. And lastly, I would tab some key topics in the wiring rules. For example, but not limited to, water zones, earthing, switchboards, testing steps, maximum demand, and volt drop. I mentioned the last two because if you get questions on those in your exam, you do have to do calculations. And so contrary to what I said about your electrical knowledge in this exam, if you have your head around those two topics, it will come to a great advantage to you in the exam. I'm not actually going to tab out those key topics right now. I've already set my exam, but you definitely should spend the next half an hour doing that. It's great practice flicking backwards and forwards from the index to where the water zones are or the earthing is. I would tab out as many key topics as you think are worthwhile being able to go straight to in the exam. So for instance, if you got a question about water zoning, you can then skip going to the index and go straight to your water zoning tab. I would definitely suggest putting them along the top for your key topics and just write WZ for water zone or whatever little key that you can use that makes sense to you. Okay, let's finish off with some tips for while you're in your exam. The question format can be laid out that sometimes the answer you need to give is the correct statement, and sometimes the answer you need to give is the statement that is the outlier. Don't stress about topics that are outside of the wiring rules. If they ask questions on it, it will pop up on the screen. It's provided for you. You want to identify key phrases in the questions. Sometimes it's super obvious and other times it's quite difficult and unclear. You've got the ability to flag questions. So if you're spending 5 to 10 minutes on a question, you should flag it and move on. To miss out on 10 easy questions because you spent too much time on a hard one could be quite impactful on your end result. From the get-go, if you can't figure out a key phrase or you've spent 2 minutes or more on a question and it's still not clear as to what answer they would like, you should also flag it and move on to your next question. That about does it for this video. Hope it was helpful. Don't forget to do the algorithm things and help us out. Like, comment, subscribe, and follow for more from an NZ tradie. Put these cupboard doors back on then. How's it going? At the end say,